გამარჯობა.
სალამი მარი, როგორ ხარ?
კარგად თქვენ?
არამის, ნორმალური.
კარგად ისმის თქვენი ხმა.
ხო ჩაუტიო, ძალიან ხმა მაღალი ხო არ არის?
არა, კარგია.
კარგია. კარგი, აი, თორნიკე შემოგვიერთ და როგორ ხარ თორნიკე? ხმა ჩართე, ხმა. ხმა, ხო.
ეხლა?
კი, ისმის. როგორ ახარ?
კარგად, შე როგორ? ბრიუსელში ვარ.
არამის, ვარ. სად ხარ?
ბრიუსელში.
ბრიუსელში ხარ?
ხო, ისა, ხმა ხო არის მის რაღაცა ცოტა მუსიკალური ფონია იქეთ. და ხო არ გესმის? არა, ხო?
არა. მარი, არ შემოდის რამე ხმა, მე არ მესმის არაფერი და.
არა, მშვენივრად ისმის.
კარგი. ბუკა რამდა კითხო, ესე იგი, ჩვენ 7 წუთი გვაქვს თითოს, ხო, თავიდან?
კი, 7-დან, რა ვიცი, 7-დან 10-მდე შეგუძლები
არა, ჯობია ეგრე და დრაზე ვლაპარაკობთ, ესე იგი, რა თქმა უნდა, სტატუსის თემაზე.
სტატუსის თემა აუცილებლად მე პირველი ვკითხავ ლინას. ზოგადად მართოების ის მოდის, რა ქვია, რიპორტი ევროკომისიის ამ შექმნილი ვითარებიდან გამომდინარე უკრაინის ომი და ასე შემდეგ, როგორი განწყობები არის, ეხლა რამდენად რეალურია ეს გაფართოება, რა განწყობაა შიგნით ევროპული კავშირის შიგნით და რა შესაძლებლობები აქვს ჩვენ ნაირ ქვეყნად.
ხო, ესე იგი უფრო ზოგადი კითხვა, ხო?
ზოგადს ვკითხავ მას, ხო. და რამდენად მე მინდა აუცილებლად ვიკითხო ამ ევროპული კავშირის რეფორმაზე, როგორ რამდენად მზად არის თვითონ, როგორ ემზადებიან, შენც კითხავ ამას აუცილებლად რამენ ფორმით, რომ აი მაკრონის და შოლცის ექსპერტები 12 ექსპერტის მიერ შემუშავებული ეს რეფორმა რამდენად შორს შეგვიძლია წავიდეთ და რეალურად რა შესაძლებლობა არის რომ რეალური რეფორმირება მოხდეს ევროპული კავშირის შიგნითაც რომ მზად იყვნენ ახალი წევრების მისაღებად. და რა თქმა უნდა გადმოვალ შენთანაც ამ კითხვით რომ აი ჩვენ რა შანსები გვაქვს, რა შესაძლებლობა გვაქვს, რა გამოწვევები გვაქვს და რა უნდა მოხდეს რომ მივიღოთ როგორ გონია სანამ ჩავერთვებით რა შანსები გვაქვს.
აუ ჯერ არ არის მე მგონი ზუსტად გარკვეული, იმიტომ რომ აუ ვიცი ხა ამათ ძალიან ბევრი რამეა დამოკიდებული, ესენი შანსს არ აძლევენ, ყველაფერს აკეთებენ იმისთვის რომ აღიზენ და რა ვიცი, აბა იმათ ძალიან უნდა წესით კომისიას უნდა რომ ბევრი რამის გამო ძირითადად გეოპოლიტიკური თემების გამო რომ მისცენ სტატუსი, მაგრამ ამათ მაინდა-მაინც თავიანთი პირობებით უნდათ რომ მე რა თქმა უნდა ამათ ხო არჩევნები აინტერესებს სხვა არაფერი ხო და მე მგონია რომ ნუ ძნელი სათქმელია ჯერ იმიტომ ჯერ კომისიის დასკვნა იქნება ერთი და მე შეიძლება იყოს მე კი არა მე იქნება კაუნსილის ხო და კაუნსილზე არის ქვეყნები რომლებიც პირველად უფრო კრიტიკულად არიან განწყობილი და ახლა ბოლო ინფორმაციით რაც აქ არის კომისიასაც უჭირს რეკომენდაციის მიცემა და შეიძლება კომისიამ ნუ ეს ჯერ არ ვიცი შეიძლება კომისიამ ისეთი დასკვნა დადოს რომ სადაც რეკომენდაციას არის უბრალოდ იტყვის ეს შესრულდა ეს არ შესრულდა და მე კაუნსილმა გადაწყვიტოს რომ ეგეც შესაძლებელია
ეს კოლეგებს შევხვდით ბალტიის ქვეყნებიდან და ზუსტად ეგეთივე ვარაუდით ისიც ბრიუსელიდან იყო ჩამოსული რომ აი შეიძლება არც კი იყოს არც არაო რეალურად ესე გაბლარული
თუმცა კიდე არის დრო შეიძლება კიდე შეიცვალოს
კი და იმანაცივე მითხრა ბოლო მომენტში ყველაფერი შეიძლება ბოლო მომენტში გადაწყდესო და ესენი კიდე მანამდე რას ჩაიდენენ და რას იზავენ მე ამათი ამბავი რო ვიცი არ დააკლებენ მაგას ხელს რეალურად
ხო მაგრამ მე მაინც მგონია ბუკა რომ ამათ სტატუსის მიღება მაინც აწყობთ. მე არ ვფიქრობ, რომ ბოლომდე საბოტაჟი, თუმცა ორივესთვის მზად არიან. მაგრამ აწყობთ იმიტომ, რომ ამ ფიქრობენ, რომ არჩევნებში ეს ხელს შეუწყობთ, თორემ რამე თან სტატუსით ხო რა, კანდიდატის სტატუსით აქტიურად დიდი არაფერი გექნება სტანდარტიზად თუ არაფერს არ გააკეთებ, არც მოლაპარაკებებს დაიწყებ და არც წევრი არ გახდები არასდროს.
Welcome back. How are you, Linas? Thank you very
Sorry
much.
for interrupting your intensive discussion.
Hello.
What's the topic? Guess what's the issue with since the rapidly approaching the report release of the European Commission. So sharply in 1 minute we will start recording, and as I said, I will give give the floor to you to talk about the enlargement and the perspectives. What are the chances? How the European Union is preparing for that? How is it seen? Is it the process of the reformation is going inside the European Union? And what are the pros and cons for the enlargement? I will ask about that. Then I will move to Thornike to talk about Georgia's perspectives and chances, and then we'll come up with the Q&A. I will be asking you about the Ukraine's issue as well, and the Middle East crisis, if you don't mind, of course.
How long it will last, Alex?
Max one hour maximum.
Can we make it in 45 minutes?
Well, we can.
At least me personally, because I would.
I
would appreciate
also
very
need
much
to go
if it's possible.
So okay, let's start immediately, and
Let's shoot it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm starting.
Okay. Dear colleagues, dear friends, good evening. We are back at the Rondeli Foundation's series of webinars, which is dedicated, of course, to the EU enlargement process. Of course, we are all concerned and watching closely the developments in the Middle East, the tragic developments and the ongoing fighting. Israelis are protecting their land and they're fighting against the terrorists. The fighting is going on in Ukraine against Russia's invasion. So all this in this context, EU enlargement is still one of the most important issues for Georgia, for many in Georgia, for majority of Georgians, and very soon, in less than 1 month, there will be the release of the European Commission's enlargement report. So who else should we invite if not our great friend Linas Linkevicius, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, former ambassador, permanent representative of Lithuania to NATO, and the member of the prominent European think tanks at the moment, as well as our dear colleague, friend, Thornike Gordadze, my predecessor, former state minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration, and currently the professor at the Paris Institute for Political Studies, Science is Paul. So welcome, gentlemen. I will give you the floor right away to Minister Linkevicius. Please, Minister, the floor is yours, and then we will proceed with the questions, please.
Yeah, thank Alex for the opportunity. As you know, we're really watching and observing this process quite intensively and trying to influence as much as possible, but at the same time, we'll be saying that we cannot do that for Georgia, definitely. And when we're talking about some conditions of these points, which were launched by Commission, these 12 points, particularly to Georgia, it's not just motivation important, not only progress, but also intentions to take it seriously by the government. And unfortunately, during my last contacts, at least gist was that it's not appropriate. And sometimes these tasks are overlooked or misunderstood or underestimated, or whatever you can call it. It's very difficult to fulfill if you're not accepting, if you're not understanding what we're talking about. So this is quite gloomy picture, but at the same time, we all would like to see Georgia in the process. When we're talking about enlargement, it's not only process should be taken into account, but also not only a result, I would say, but also the process. So when we're talking about enlargement as the result, also a lot of, I shouldn't say skepticism, maybe that would be too strong, but some hesitations, because European Union must reform itself as well by accepting new members, and especially large members like Ukraine, for instance. So there are some saying that we have to first reorganize our structures, to review, then to talk about enlargement. But again, we are saying it, not just us, but somebody else also, that those candidate countries cannot be kept, hostages of this discussion, because we are talking not only about result, but also about the process. And process must be inclusive, and that's important. Now we have some groups, let's say, and so it happened that we were talking about Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia. Some time ago, Georgia was like front runner of the process. Also easy to, not too many running at the same time, but nevertheless. And it happened that thanks to Ukrainian war, to Ukrainian, so to say, courage, and to what they are doing to defending their freedom, this level was a bit upgraded, maybe one can say in advance, but nevertheless, Ukraine and also Moldova were given candidate status, as you know, but Georgia was kept into the process. It was not pushed aside. So some said that it was a big blow, but I would say European perspective was given, clear, so to say, points and conditions were also mentioned, but bad side of that process is that mispercepted, and that's also not good to see that. Very difficult to see what kind of report we would like to expect that by the end of the month. So we are making assumptions, so I don't know. But my gist is, and now I'll share with you, that given all this, so to say, emotional attitude, I would like to keep Georgia on the screen, due to many reasons, not to push too much far away or into the kind of influence of Russia. Also following mood in the society, we know that society is quite pro-European, transatlantic, and that's also a very important factor. So and again, also measuring by progress made by Ukraine and Moldova. So here, in short, we see some conditions why Georgia, no, first of all, Ukraine and Moldova, there's a good chance to start negotiations, I would say. I'll start by saying that. That means I'm making assumptions that Georgia also could be upgraded, so to say, not because of progress Georgia made, because there's none, basically, almost nothing, but because of the same reason, not to push the side of the picture. And there are many maybe reasons for that, but some of them I'd like to mention. Maybe this is political momentum. It will not do that now, so next year will be elections in the Euro Parliament, a new commission will be formed, more headache, more problems, and politicians will be busy with other tasks, and maybe that will be not priority. Also, good to mention in our webinar, this also was not a big secret, and many think that candidate status was devalued, after some decisions with regard to some countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina. They were given 14 points, also tasks, and none of them was implemented, literally none of them, but status was given. So one can say, cannot be double standards, we should, that doesn't mean that we should low level of requirements, but at the same time, approach should be more or less compatible. And since the precedent was like that, we also, at least us, we always trying to say that let's apply equal approach, so to say. And we felt some unjusted, so to say, position with regard to other integration processes. For instance, with regard to Serbia, we probably remember that there were politicians and leaders of Commission saying that they would like to see Serbia member by 2025. And then we said that it's not calendar-driven process. It should be by so to say, results. And we are talking about results, affiliation and association with the common foreign security policy of Europe. It's not the least important, right? And we felt no progress in that. And we cannot afford to get into the family one more country, one more additional headache, which we already have sufficient so far. Not naming names, but everyone knows what we meant. So to have additional, just because somebody would like to have the process inclusive. So again, the same reasons, saying that we have to maybe also be more inclusive with regard to the countries like Georgia. Also, I believe, I would assume, it's my assumptions that if it will be done, if Georgia will be given this candidate status, then besides these 12 conditions which were not fulfilled, some of them, maybe we can register some progress, but really not so much. So should be given additional conditions. And one of these, I believe, very important would be, I mentioned, association with alignment with the common foreign security policy of Europe. And in some sense, also forthcoming elections. That should be conditioned. We all know that they should be transparent, they should be democratic by all means, and we still have some doubts whether it will happen. So if not, this status should not be given. But the chance to get it should be given for the reasons I just mentioned before. So punishment or engagement, it's, should be a quite complicated situation. And again, I would repeat, it's my personal views. I definitely am not speaking on behalf of Commission. I don't know what will happen. But these assumptions, they have a right to have a role, so to say, in place. And that would happen. So later, maybe we'll be able to discuss those 12 points more concretely later in our discussion, and we will exchange our views, what kind of progress we can register. But here, my overwhelming just approach of the process with regard to Georgia in particular, and possible recommendations of Commission.
Thank you very much. It is really very valuable, Linas, what you have just said. I know here in Georgia, the CSO community, as well as in Brussels, the issues of the free and fair elections, as well as the issue of the common foreign and security policy alignment of Georgia, because the degree is lowering definitely, and we need to demonstrate that we are on the same page with the European Union, where we want to get as its a member. But you also mentioned about the threat of the enlarging the gap between Georgia and on one hand and Ukraine and Moldova. Most probably Ukraine and Moldova will get the invitation for the accession talks. If now I go with the question to Thornike. If Georgia does not get the candidate status, is there a fear, a concern in the European Union that Georgian Dream ruling party could, on the declaration level, deviate from the European and Euro-Atlantic course?
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Alex, for the invitation. Yeah, this is the question that is discussed now in Brussels, and the main motivation in favor of giving the status is that if Georgia doesn't get the status, Georgian government and Georgia, the country, will become even more pro-Russian, and it will be a pretext to criticize the European Union, to blame the European Union again, and to explain to the population that so that Russia is the only possible way for Georgia, or at least the way out of European Union. Maybe they'll be not directly Russia, but at least thinking about other kind of alliances with Russia or with China or with others. So this is why many people inside the Commission is getting increasingly geopolitical, and especially with the war in Ukraine. And these people's argument is that we should give the status to Georgia to avoid this geopolitical shift. But at the same time, and these are the same people, I will not quote the personalities who told me that, but same people believe that in doing this, they will complicate Georgia's government's attempt to get closer to Russia. But at the same time, the candidate status is not something that automatically will limit Georgia's rapprochement with Russia, because candidate status, there is nothing, if it is given without conditions, so there is no reason to stop Georgian government's current policies. They will, on the contrary, they will continue this ambiguity they have been playing for many years now, saying that, okay, we are also going towards Europe, we got the candidate status with our conditions, without not fulfilling the European Union conditions, and on the other hand, pursuing their policy of de facto going farther from Europe. So this is the current state of discussions. Some people believe that the Georgian government wants the status but doesn't want Europe, and wants the status mainly for internal political battles and to win the elections, because as Linas said, and as we all know, still 80% of Georgia's population is in favor of rapprochement with the European Union and in favor of membership with the European Union. Among them are people who vote for Georgian Dream, and these people, the Georgian Dream needs to keep this ambiguity to not lose a part of their electorate still. So I think there are some observers in Georgia who believe that Georgian Dream is sabotaging the candidate status. I think they want the candidate status, but they don't want real implications of this candidate status or real fulfillment of the conditions and real rapprochement with Europe. They need it as the instrument for internal political competition. That's why there is no still clear answer here in Brussels what will happen. Probably in November, not anymore in October. It's the conclusion will be delivered at the beginning of November, probably from the Commission. And there are now discussions about even possible conclusion without recommendation. I mean, so the Commission could give recommendations. So we could give recommendations, but could give conclusions, but not recommendations about the status, and leaving this decision to the Council in December. The Commission could evaluate, saying that these conditions are fulfilled, these are not fulfilled, and then the Council will decide. This is one of the possibilities, but still we're in October, beginning of October, and a month is ahead, and many things can change in Brussels, and before December also, because there are member states that don't have yet their position about Georgia. In December, probably the most debates will be around Ukraine, because we know that there's some members inside the European Union, for example, Hungary, now the best friend of the current Georgian government, who wants to very hardly negotiate about Ukraine. Basically, they are against the majority of the members of the European Union to start negotiations with Ukraine. But Georgian government believes that there could be a bargain between Hungary could accept this the will of Germany, France, and other major players in exchange of giving to Georgia candidate status. This is also one of the bets of the current government of Georgia.
Well, how do you think? Since I think Mr. Orban is still in Tbilisi. I don't know.
Yes.
He
He's
has
still
arrived 3 days ago. We have like Georgian Dream has like a national holidays, about his stay here. But
it's a risky strategy to consider to enter the European Union or to get the candidate status with the support of Orban and with his possible negative influence. But this is the road that Georgian government decided to adopt, and this is very different from what was Georgia's policies for many years.
That was my question to both of you. How wise is to make a major partner inside the European Union, Viktor Orban, and to rely on his protection and lobbying inside the European Union. Naturally, we have seen many times that Hungary has its own national interests, and I doubt very much. I'll be happy if I'm wrong, but I doubt very much that Orban would fight for Georgia's national interests with thumbs and nails, and do not get anything in exchange for personally Hungary's national interests. How do you think? How wise? And also, I have the question. You mentioned, Thornike, that it's still time there. I have this question both to you. The process of impeachment of the President Zurabishvili is ongoing. We are expecting for the results of the Supreme Court to be announced by the end of this week. Let's leave alone for a while the continuation of the process, but how it can affect the decision in the European Commission or in the European Council if the Supreme Court decides to impeach President Zurabishvili for her attempts to advocate Georgia's European integration. Linas, what do you think?
Well, I will not intrude into domestic Georgian affairs, but definitely it's not just my judgment, but President Zurabishvili, regardless of influence, political weight in Georgia, which is the only European voice basically out of Tbilisi. Pro-European, definitely quite clear, and punishment or impeachment or whatever, that would be very negative. Besides those examples which were so far, I would mention, for instance, foreign agent law, which attempts to have this law, also a resumption of Russian flights, civilian flights, right? I would also mention Misha Saakashvili. You can respect him, disrespect, but third president in prison to die or to I don't know, it's really very negative impact to not just to EPP group, but definitely to other groups as well. And all in all, if we have more examples like that, that will be very negative. And if we have some slight fragile balance of possibilities I just mentioned before, Thornike said maybe some maybe staged approach, as he said, maybe will be no recommendations, and Council will decide whatever happened to keep Georgia somehow in the process, not to push far away. We need really some positive signals, and so far these signals I mentioned were just negative. And additional impeachment of Zurabishvili, I doubt whether it's possible. You can tell me, is it possible to do that? Is enough votes in the parliament? I doubt, is it really realistic? But nevertheless, these attempts are looking very, very negative. When to your question about how wise to have Hungary as a country, frankly, there's no mechanism to expel Hungary. Let's start saying by that. And that's also very important. So since you are in, it's very difficult to be out. It's not so easy, and that's also a good lesson. Not to invite and not to include those who would be problematic in the future. So I believe many of those who will take decisions about future members will think twice or more times before doing that, just to avoid situation we are facing now. And it's wise or not wise, it's not a question. It's a question what to do with that. So far, Hungary was also maneuvering somehow and not blocking major decisions. They were publicly making their statements, disagreeing with many things, be it sanctions or something else, or even NATO business, right? This blocking of the NATO-Ukrainian Commission so far and so on. But they were never, at the end of the day, blocking final decisions of consensus, and that was the approach. So what will be in the future? Difficult to say, but so far it was complicated but manageable.
Yes, thank you for your very frank response. Thornike, your turn.
Yeah, so first, Hungary, I completely agree with what Linas said. Hungary's position is a spoiler's position, and they are in minority. Their policies are viewed very critically by everyone, and also it concerns also partially to the Commissioner Várhelyi also, who is seen as a very close ally of Viktor Orban. So for many European member states, potentially having another Hungary inside is an issue. So it doesn't help Georgia, but Georgian government has no other option, to be honest, because they also see now this rapprochement with Hungary is also based on some ideological preferences. And we see this constantly, that Georgian Dream, who was before member of a socialist group of parties, a social democratic and socialist group of parties of Europe, and these parties are pro-European, most of them, is now changed totally this affiliation and went to the far right, where openly anti-European political parties, and one of them is, of course, Viktor Orban's Fidesz, and this doesn't really help. But for internal political games, Georgian Dream can claim that, look, we have an European member state who does this, and this, and who supports Georgia, and we have same values with some of the Europeans, and this is the European Union that is able, like Brussels and some other bigger players, and not Hungary. So the debate is about what is really European and what is real Europe and what is not real Europe. So this is the narrative of Viktor Orban that Georgian Dream is now taking on board. Then the question about the impeachment. I don't think that even if the Constitutional Court gives the positive answer to the question of impeachment, that Georgian Dream has the possibility to implement and to vote in the parliament, because according to the Constitution, 2/3 of the voices are needed, and Georgian Dream doesn't have a constitutional majority. So it's of course, it will tarnish the image of Georgia, but at the same time, it could be played as, look, the ruling party cannot do everything in Georgia, and we have, I don't know, this is a pluralism, and it means that Georgia is not controlled 100% by the political party called Georgian Dream and their informal leader, Mr. Ivanishvili. So it's very difficult to say in what direction it will influence. At least Georgian Dream will try, if there is no impeachment, to use it again as a plus for in their presenting themselves as being more democratic than what the opposition or what some critical voices are saying.
Yes, and they are also trying to align, in this case, if they do not get the votes or the major opposition party votes against the impeachment, they are trying to make an alliance between Salome Zurabishvili and the opposition parties to push towards the UNM Salome Zurabishvili. So
I don't think it will be possible. I'm not analyzing party politics in Georgia, but it will be difficult for Salome Zurabishvili to join the UNM, I think, and vice versa.
Yeah, we all, you both spoke about the geopolitical decision, but at the same time, we also hear that the recommendations fulfillment are needed. The European Commission's initial report, short version, has concluded that only 3 out of 12 recommendations were implemented by Georgia. But on the other hand, the Georgian dream is talking about the 11 recommendations fulfilled by Georgia. It is hard to distinct these exact recommendations, but in your view, what do you think? Which recommendations exactly are the most important from the point of view of the European Union and the European Commission? And where do the European Commission expects progress the most? Linas, please.
Oh, many, I would say, but I will mention depolarization, for instance, de-oligarchization. There's no understanding what that means in Georgia government. When we're talking about the oligarchization, they have one person in mind. We also have one person in mind sometimes, but it's a system. It should be a system to avoid that somebody not elected official or non-official has influence to elected institutions, and that should be really prevented. And this is a big problem. Judiciary reforms, it looks like some progress according to even Commission, but we know that we need a transparent selection of Supreme Court judges, for instance. When we're talking about anti-corruption measures, also independence of anti-corruption bureau is a must. It's not the case so far. So when we're talking about media freedom, also there's some progress, but when we're talking to media representatives, it's very easy to register TV channel. It takes 1 week, I was told, bureaucratically. But then if you are opposition channel, you have a lot of problems of financial sources, so to say, are prevented, and also prosecution, political prosecution, and we have good examples of that. So this is again, maybe some progress could be registered, but we really see misunderstanding here. When I was talking to the minister, I remember last year, not this year, I was raising these issues because I had some contacts with media. I asked them about their situation, and I was told that this is the brightest situation in Georgia. They do not understand why they are criticized. They're rejecting this criticism. I said, look, if you are honestly want to follow, so to say, you should admit that this is true and there are facts. There are arguments behind, and you really should seriously address these issues. If you are rejecting just from the scratch everything what was told, very difficult to expect any positive assessment or conclusions or recommendations, whatever it will come on behalf of the Commission. So here I really quite skeptical here, and I don't know. So what would be again my recommendation, to use this still the existing channels of media to explain just very concretely what is the progress or in the opposite with regard to all these recommendations, to tell really the truth. Also, beforehand of these recommendations and possibility to get, for instance, candidate status, to tell that this is not a word by far, and this is not a word to the government, which did not enough, to say the least, if not to say that in more negative, so to say, way. And this is just to include, to keep Georgia in the process, but not to award government because there was no progress. And that should be repeatedly said, because government, I believe, they will try to sell it to the public as a big achievement, as you said. So they're doing some things like Hungary, or I don't know, but nevertheless they still on track, and that's kind of their strongest position. But it shouldn't be the case. So we should distinguish also process and result. You can be a candidate, you even can start negotiations of accession, but we know example of Turkey, for instance. So how many years needed sometimes to get closer, and sometimes few believe that this is possible at all, right? So we really should be realistic. This is just a process. This is nothing done. It's not a final stage, but just we'd like to keep country into geopolitical sphere of influence of Europe. And this is shared by public at large, right? So this is important factor. The rest is also important, but not the main importance. So that's why we are trying sometimes not to a lower level of requirements, but just to keep country engaged, involved. And I'm trying just to share my own narrative if something will develop according lines we were trying to describe, which are also not more than our assumptions.
And Thornike, what do you think it is? Prime Minister of Georgian Dream, Garibashvili, has said that it is unfair that Georgia did not get the candidate status last year, and it will be unfair if we do not get it now, this year, and then we will not leave it like it is. I quote him that if we do not get, we will not leave it like it is, and we will not leave this without reaction. So I think this is kind of the tone which is not acceptable in Europe, in Brussels, in the capitals, you know better than myself. But the most argument what we hear here in Georgia, that we were ahead and we are still ahead of Ukraine and Moldova. And why they grant the Ukraine and Moldova the candidate status, and why did not they grant Georgia the candidate status? What do you think? How just and how grounded are these arguments of the Georgian Dream and their leaders?
Again, I think it goes with the question you asked Linas, when European Union says that Georgia fulfilled 3 recommendations out of 12, and then the Georgian government says that they fulfilled 11 out of 12. It's very simple. It's European Union is accepting new members, or accepting to negotiate with new potential members. So they have criteria. They decide which country they will take on board, or which the country they don't take on board. So if you want to join a club, it's not you decide if you fulfill the conditions or not. It's the club is deciding. So you cannot have these pretensions of being more qualified to say that you deserve membership, and the others are just not unfair. And these rhetorics again is used very much in internal political discourse, because Georgian Dream knows that again most of Georgian citizens are pro-European. So, and this is their problem. I think their attempt is to little by little discredit European Union, and to make Georgian people disappointed with the European Union, telling them that, look, we did what they recommended, but they are unfair for some reason. One of the reasons is that they want us to be in war with Russia, which is a total nonsense. But this argument can work internally, I mean. Second argument is they are unfair. They don't like us because maybe we're too conservative, or we're too traditionalist, or we're too Christian. This is another set of reasons, which also resonates in Georgian population's mind, because they're a significant part of Georgians who still consider themselves as traditionalists, Orthodox, etc., etc. So this is these rhetorics have this objective of first objective is to make European Union more negative about Georgia, and second is to discredit European Union and their values in the eyes of the population of Georgia, who is still pro-European. So I think this is, and when it comes to the fulfillment of the recommendations and the objective state of Georgian institutions, yes, I think Georgia somehow was, as we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, was ahead of Ukraine and Moldova in many aspects. By the way, this is not the merit of Mr. Petriashvili. This is a very long process that was started after the Rose Revolution and for many years. But at the same time, Moldova and Ukraine have now pro-European governments who accept the conditionality and who are fighting to implement this conditionality. And they are not criticizing 24-hour a day European Union. They don't attack the club they want to join. This is a difference. The attitude adopted by the Georgian government when Joseph Borrell visited Georgia, or when the Prime Minister went to Granada and said that European Union's behavior was oppressive against Georgia. The same day, Russian Federation, together with Abkhaz separatists, declared that they were they will open a new naval base in Abkhazia, and the Georgian government's reaction was very mild. And it was almost nothing. Only the Georgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs made some statement, and the other the ministers or officials didn't comment at all. And in parallel, they are portraying European Union as oppressive. European Union doesn't occupy 20% of Georgia's territory, and this is a clear misunderstanding where who is the enemy and who is the friend.
I doubt that there is a misunderstanding in GD. They know where are their friends, but right. They are the topic for the other.
I said it diplomatically.
Yes. And Linas, you mentioned about the award for the government and the Georgian society. There are a lot of talks and the info coming from the capitals as well as from Brussels that there could be sort of award for Georgian people. We could see this wording in the conclusion. How realistic is to have this not distinction, but the underlining of the efforts of the Georgian society?
It's a matter of perception. A lot of examples when some things are happening because of efforts of the government sometimes, and they are not taking as a government efforts and result, like it was visa-free regime in Moldova, for instance, and vice versa. Sometimes some targets are really so exposed that and they, if not taken, it's also applicable to Georgia. I would say membership action plan, right? In NATO, for instance. So it was like a sacred thing. It not happened, and it was a big disaster, failure, and wasn't deserved. By the way, now when we are talking about Europe integration, in order to have whole picture, it's also good to remember also NATO integration. And if we have this kind of very, very subtle lines not to be crossed, not to be excluded from the process with regard to the European Union, same is with NATO. And if we really are not happy with decisions on Georgia, on Ukraine, in Vilnius summit, we needed more, definitely. But nevertheless, it's obviously clear that map is abolished, right, for Ukraine. Now it's not needed for Ukraine, but needed for Georgia. And this is again distinction. If we had some same package, so we had same package with regard to European Union, it was disrupted, and same situation with regard to NATO. So it's not occasionally, it's not by accident, it's because of systematic, so to say, problems, and this is applicable to the government, basically. So it's not a word, whatsoever. This is something else. It's regardless of what they did or didn't do. We're still keeping in and God knows how long it will take, how long the patient will take. So again, it's a matter of perception. If government would like to present this to the public as a big achievement, it's very important to translate to the normal language the people that is really has nothing to do, and not only with regard to European Union, but I would like to and suggest also not to forget NATO integration, which is not less important for the people of Georgia, I believe, even probably more.
Mhm. Thank you. Thornike, if you want to reflect on the same question, I also have one, I think, last question for you, for both of you, in fact. Charles Michel, President of the European Council, has numerously mentioned the date, since Linas was talking about the dates and the date-driven enlargement, 2030. I know that this is sort of the deadline for the internal reformation, or maybe the same for the countries to be prepared for the enlargement. How realistic is to see the enlargement, at least in direction of the Western Balkan countries, as well as with regard to Ukraine in 2030?
Who wants to? I can tell something about this 2030. It's in 2030, the situation will be different, of course, from the point of view of European institutions, because there is a project of reform of European Union institutions, and there are numerous possible reforms. But one of the most important reforms is to change the rule of unanimity in the Council. So it will make decisions much easier inside the European Union, and it will make also enlargement much easier, because the fear is to have some new members who would be able to block, the one member to block the decision. So if it is the majority rule, so there's less fears about this, and the European Union can work, more smoothly with this reform. So that's why I don't think when in Georgia many people argue that okay, Georgia should get the candidate status no matter what the government does, because this is the last window of opportunity and it will be closed, etc. Maybe there will be some delay with new commission and with new elections after the elections of European elections, but this window of opportunity is not going to be closed soon. It's my analysis, personal analysis. And if Georgia fulfills everything and is ahead some of the even Western Balkan states, this is realistic. It's possible, because we mentioned Bosnia Herzegovina. This country is totally paralyzed. They are doing nothing, and if Georgia wants, Georgia can be ahead of Bosnia Herzegovina very, very easily. But there is no political will for that. But in case there is political will, Georgia will not be forgotten, because the frame of possible the future European Union was already announced by the same Charles Michel in his discourse, in his speech, and Georgia is part of it. So, and Georgia's the aspirations of Georgian people, Georgia's European future was already mentioned in the decisions that were made last year. So geographically, this discussion that Georgia may be not part of Europe is already done. So Georgia is part of Europe, and Georgia has aspirations to become member of European Union, and this is recognized by the European Union. So yeah, this is very negative if Georgia is lagging behind, and if Ukraine and Moldova start negotiations and Georgia still doesn't have a candidate status. This is very bad, a very bad signal. And at the same time, it doesn't mean that all the doors are shut. And I'm sure if the decision is made in the last decision that will be made in December in Brussels, no matter if it is negative or positive, if it is positive, it's very well. But if it's negative about the candidate status, there will be a very clear statement about the European future of Georgia, again reaffirming and supporting, etc. So I don't know what will be the decision, but I don't think that this is the end of all Georgia's European future. I'm hearing now the voices in Brussels about Armenia. More and more people are telling that we should do something for Armenia because Armenians geopolitically now are trying to diversify their foreign policy. They understood that dependence on Russia was very bad for their future. So I'm not excluding that Armenia will join also the club one day, and even sooner than later. So for Georgia, it's just doing the job and doing the recommendations and showing the political will that they want to be European. This is the most important.
Thank you, Thornike. Linas, your final.
Yeah, unfortunately, not much time. But in short, I really agree that dates will not help. Politicians like to be popular or to be heard, and they're mentioning these dates. It was 2025 for Serbia, now 2030 for other countries. It will not help, definitely. And in 10 years could be a lot of changes. And Thornike mentioned Armenia. So Armenia 10 years ago made U-turn. They were also front runners. They were ready to sign a association agreement. And after decisions which were not enforced for them, right, by Russia, they made a U-turn and the window or door was closed. So now it could be reopened due to other reasons. And it's up to Armenia and also other conditions to change the situation. So dates will not help. Very, very important not to close the door like Armenia did 10 years ago. Simply to continue. Yes, if it's not, it will not happen this year, it will happen later, but very important to keep on track, you know, and also very important to fulfill conditions which will be more than 12 by the end of the year. It's my assumption. And very important for the public to understand, to pressure government. Now government trying, some in opposition do not believe that they are doing that honestly and with motivation, but mainly they are doing that because public likes it to do, not because government motivated. But nevertheless, whatever will happen, very important to keep this pressure and to push forward. And Georgia must be a member of our family, not only geographically but also by other means, and that would be my wish.
Thank you very much for your very positive and optimistic wishes. It's our joint desire, and we believe that we belong to Europe. Thank you for your time. I know we are limited in time. Thank you for your time, for both of you. Dear Linas, dear Thornike, I appreciate your very frank, very open, and very thoughtful views regarding the enlargement and Georgia's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Bye.